And joining me now with a different perspective, retired Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona, a former military attaché in Syria. Rick, great to have you with us. What do you make of the fact that the US is leaving before the job with ISIS is completely done?
Well, I think myself and many other military analysts believe this is a mistake. I think we've all been quite vocal about the president's decision to pull out what we believe is prematurely. And I think a lot of that pushback has caused him to change the timetable, at least, that we're withdrawing. I think it's important that we remain long enough to make sure that the defeat is ISIS territorially is finalized. And we also have to make sure that we don't just create this power vacuum that the Russians and the Turks are just waiting to dive into. And they have different perspectives of what they want to happen. But the one thing they both want is the United States out of there. Right,
and in fact, the ambassador told me that Russia will be and is working currently with Turkey to eliminate those final pockets of ISIS fighters. In your assessment, are they fit to complete the job as the United States would consider complete?
Well, you know, if you look at where the ISIS pockets are located, they're pretty far from the Turkish border. So when Erdogan says that he's going to finish ISIS, and I fault the president, the U.S. president, for agreeing to this, that the Turks were going to finish ISIS, they're nowhere near a position to do that. Logistically impossible, and I don't think they have the will to do it anyway. What the Turks want is the United States out of there so they can subdue any form of Kurdish nationalism. They want to get rid of the YPG. As you know, they regard them as just another extension of the PKK. So, you know, the Turks are going to say whatever they can to get us out of there. The Russians, they of course will go after ISIS. They'll provide the air power and the support that the Syrians need. But the bulk of the fight is going to be done by the Syrian Democratic Forces.
So what are your thoughts then when you hear the ambassador say that the presence of the US troops are in fact a hindrance to them in Syria? What does that point to in terms of their strategy there, that the US presence is in fact getting in the way of?
Well, look what the Russians want here. I mean, their goal is to reassert themselves as the key player in the Middle East, something they enjoyed years and years ago. They'd like to see that again. Syria is their first step. They're doing a fairly good job with it. I will give Putin credit. You know, since they intervened in Syria in 2015, they have really been calling the shots there. And they've become the key player. Now, they've got problems with the Iranians and they've got problems with the Turks. But if the Russians have their way, they're going to have Syrian control all over all of Syria, which is what they want. Of course, that goes against what the Turks want.
Certainly. Do you believe, or rather do you agree with the ambassador that this decision was, in fact, the US president just trying to make good on a campaign promise?
Honestly, Trish, I don't know what was driving him to do that. He had this phone call with Erdogan, and all of a sudden, we're withdrawing. Now, I know he said all along through the campaign, he wanted to get us out of wars in the Middle East, not into wars in the Middle East. But there's a smart way to do it and a not smart way to do it. And just arbitrarily pulling troops out, announcing when you're going to leave. This is bad. This is what we did in 2011. It didn't work then, and it won't work now.
Now, I also asked the ambassador about his assessment of the current climate in Syria since Trump announced that the troops would be withdrawing. Take a listen.
The American militaries, they're not leaving the area. They are withdrawing according to announced plans. They are trying to withdraw from Syria, but they're still here in the area. They're in Iraq, and they decided that's enough for defending their national interests. From our perspective, the possible withdrawal of American troops from Syria will contribute to a better stability in the region because, according to our information, some fighters from some terrorists, they were enjoying calm and conformity. They were comfortable with some areas which should be under the control of Americans. Maybe they were not entirely under the control.
So that needs a bit of an explanation, Rick, so bear with me. The ambassador went on to say that he was referring here to a refugee camp called Rukban, which is in an area controlled by a US-backed rebel group. In fact, we're looking at a map of it right there. It's located to the Tanfa US military base. Now, he says in a recent UN aid attempt to the camp that the aid didn't arrive to some 50,000 refugees who are staying there. He's saying that about 1,000 current or former terrorists are living there among the refugees, and he says that they're not sure what the fate of that failed UN aid mission was, and that they're, quote, not sure who enjoyed this humanitarian assistance. So, Rick, what do you make of the claim that the US is making the conditions there comfortable for terrorists?
I'll agree with the first part of his statement. You know, that aid to the Rukban camp has been a problem, a continuing problem. You can fault the Syrians, you can fault the Americans, you can fault the Jordanians, you can fault the UN. There's enough blame to go around. It's a humanitarian disaster. We all know that. Are there militants in the camp? Yes, of course. The United States has even said we believe that there might be as many as 1,000 ISIS fighters there. The problem is who controls the area. We've set up, the United States has set up a deconfliction area, an area they don't want any other troops in. But to say that we control the camp, I don't think is an accurate statement. If you listen to what the ambassador said, it parrots exactly what Foreign Minister Lavrov said and the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. So these are the talking points from Moscow, and I'll give them what they're worth. And
I suppose then if the United States presence in Syria has been effective to date, and of course we know Israel's concerns about Iranian entrenchment there, should Israel feel betrayed by the United States and the US president for withdrawing its troops now?
I hope not. I'd like to think that these are two separate issues. What the United States was there for was the territorial defeat of ISIS, and we've almost achieved that. The Syrian Democratic Forces have done a wonderful job. These Kurdish fighters, along with some, Christian and Assyrian troops, are doing a really good job there. There's one little pocket remaining. They'll close that out shortly. And then the United States has fulfilled what it went there for. I know that there's been talk about we want to stay until all the Iranians are gone. I think that's really kind of a non-starter. I think the Iranian problem is really what Israel is concerned about, and we're concerned with that as well. But I don't think an American troop presence is going to make any difference to that. That's going to have to be something decided by the Russians and the Israelis.
All right. Well, we appreciate that insight, of course. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona, thank you for being with us here on Perspectives.